Every morning I get up, I pinch myself. I go, am I really still doing this? I'm loving it. We are doing this job for one main reason, and that is to better society. I think I had been on 4 days. One of our officers tried to stop a car. The car didn't stop, and we had a chase, right? I became the second unit in the chase. He's driving on the wrong side of the road, and there's traffic that's oncoming traffic. He came to a stop like half an inch from going through the window of Office Depot. He jumps out, runs through Office Depot. We gave him the foot chase. I jumped a couple of fences, and then we caught him, right? It hit me. I was like, what am I doing? But, I got burned out there, working 6-7 days a week. I'd get home at 5 o'clock, and I knew at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, and we'd start having shootings and all kinds of stuff that I had to go back respond out to again. And I'd be there till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, come home for a couple hours, sleep, and then back at it at like 8 o'clock again.
Wow. Are you able to separate your emotions and stay focused on what the main goal is?
Yeah, that's a very hard thing to do, and it comes with time and training. We hold a lot of power. The government has given me the power to take someone's life under certain circumstances. I've been very blessed that God has given me these opportunities. But, these opportunities that I've gotten, I've then taken advantage of. Just don't say it. You have to actually do it. That's what my driving force is. My name is Irfan Zaidi, and I've lived here in the Bay Area for over 30 years. I moved here when I was in 12th grade. Very bad time to move, but I actually grew up in Texas.
Nice.
And like I said, when I was in 12th grade, my dad got a job, so obviously we moved with him, and I've been here ever since. And so this is home, obviously.
Oh, that's far. Moving in 12th grade that sounds really bad. I mean, I just finished 12th grade, I just graduated, and I can easily say that 12th grade was my worst year by far in terms of just being so much pressure and everything. So how was that like for you?
Yeah, it was traumatic. I had gone to school with the same kids since I was in kindergarten. So moving, in my last year was, I was quite upset about it, obviously. Mm-hmm. But looking back at it now, I think my dad made the right move for the family, for us. And I know that myself and my brother and my sister are much more better well off than we would have been otherwise.
You've also been in law enforcement for over 20 years, right? Yeah,
I've been in law enforcement for about 26 years, and majority of that has been with the sheriff's office. Prior to that, I was with a local city jurisdiction for about 5-6 years prior to that. And then obviously I moved up to the sheriff's office. So and we can definitely talk about that.
Go ahead. We can talk about, So, real quick about the whole sheriff's office and everything like that. I know absolutely nothing about law enforcement. So could you, and I'm sure when I was talking to a few people about this episode, we kind of confused what the difference is between a sergeant, lieutenant,
sheriff,
and all those roles, sheriff, all these roles.
Police,
could you give a quick overview?
Yeah, just generally speaking, I'll give you a very broad overview here. In a police department, police departments are basically city jurisdictions. They are comprised of officers, police officers, what we typically know as police officers, and they work in city jurisdictions. They work for a chief of police. A chief of police is appointed by usually the city manager, and then the chief of police then hires his administration in different departments that could look, very different. Typically, in a medium to large size agency, a chief will usually have an assistant chief or a deputy chief, and then they'll have captains and lieutenants and sergeants and then officers. So that's basically the breakdown in a local police department. Mm-hmm. A sheriff's office is a little bit different. A sheriff's office is a county entity. So, for instance, Santa Clara County, the city county that we're sitting in right now, has a Santa Clara County sheriff. They are elected officials. They're voted in by the electorate. And because of that, and they have usually a 6-year term. So because of that, because they're elected and it's a county seat, usually sheriff's offices are much bigger organizations, and they encompass a lot more jobs that are required by this California state constitution. So, for instance, aside from what all the things that a police department does, Sheriff's offices do those things as well, but on top of that, they're required to maintain a jail facility, and then they're also required to have a civil bureau within their department. And then the third thing that they're required to do is to provide security inside courtrooms. And that's what typically is if you know anything about, if you've heard the term bailiff, that's typically where that comes from. So those are the three differences. Typically, sheriff's offices have a much bigger budget because they're a county entity. And so because of that, they have a lot more assignments, I would say, right? So the county I work for San Mateo County. And within our county, we have all the specialties that the task forces, they're joint task forces. So they're made up of various police departments within the county and other agencies. But typically, we are the ones that are basically running them. Our supervisors are the ones that are leading those task forces. Most of the funding's coming from the sheriff's office budget as well for those. So that's basically the difference between police departments and sheriff's offices, generally speaking.
Awesome. That's cool. So it seems like the sheriff, as you're saying, they have a bigger budget and they're more like powerful than the.
It's not that they're more powerful. It's just, and again, we're talking about generalities here. Yeah. So typically, yes, the sheriff's offices usually have bigger budgets, just because they're a county entity. As opposed to a city jurisdiction, municipal jurisdiction, right? So just because of that, the funding for taxes and everything is much, much greater.
But in general, when it comes to like a police officer versus a sheriff, in terms of like authority and enforcing the law, is there any differences?
There are very minute differences in the law, but at the end of the day, generally speaking, we're all the same.
So if like a sheriff were to pull you over versus a police officer, same
it's
thing?
It's the same thing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Nice.
Cool. We all go to the same police academy. So, and we can talk about the hiring process and how one becomes a police officer and what kind of stuff you have to do to become a police officer. But whether you work for the police department or the sheriff's office, you have to have the same kind of training, the basic training. That's mandated through POST. And POST is the California regulatory agency that oversees law enforcement in the state.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know any of this, but I'm glad I know now.
Yeah.
So going back a bit, like you mentioned, there's like all there's many steps that are taken to get to the level of being a sheriff and being part of the sheriff's office. So I guess could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you even got interested in law enforcement in the first place?
Sure. Yeah, I've always had an inclination to go into law enforcement since I was a little kid. A lot of my family members back in India and in Pakistan were in law enforcement, and so I guess I got inspiration from that. But I've always had that inkling since I was a little kid, and I've always had an interest in the military and doing things like that. So I was in the Army prior to this. So I've always had that kind of slant, right? And it's something that I really, truly love. Like I said, it's been 26 years or so. And I every morning I get up, I'm like, I pinch myself. I go, am I really still doing this? I'm loving it, and I love going to work every day. So that's basically where my passion came from. It wasn't something that was just like a last minute thing for me. This was like planned. I was always wanting to do it, and I always was working towards it. And so I joined the military, and it wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. It was a lot of get ready and sit around and wait kind of thing. And so, initially I thought that was going to be my career path, but I quickly learned that that's probably not where I want to go. So, I was like, hey, perfect transition. I can go into law enforcement. The thing is that when I started, there was nobody in our community to actually help guide me or mentor me. Not only that, but we didn't have internet. So it was very, very hard to get into law enforcement. You don't know. Like I knew that I wanted to, but I didn't know how. So it was very interesting because I look back now and I I really made an effort to really put myself out there, really learn, really engage myself, in this world that I live in now. And my journey, I think, was pretty unique because, like I said, I think I'm a pioneer in this field, in our community. And so there was no mentor. There's nobody I could call and go, hey, how do you do this? Or, can you point me in the right direction? There was nothing like that. So, whatever I've done on my own. And there's been a lot of struggle, but I'm really proud of like my journey because, I did it myself, right? I didn't have anybody holding my hand or anything like this. And I'm very proud, I'm the only Muslim Indian in our county that is at my level. I'm a lieutenant at the sheriff's office, and I'm I'm the highest ranking ever in our county, sheriff or police, to get to a lieutenant level. So I'm very proud of that, and that takes a lot of work, takes a lot of dedication. And obviously, I can't do anything without God. And, I've been very blessed that God has given me these opportunities. But, these opportunities that I've gotten, I've then taken advantage of, right? So we can't just sit back and just say, okay, I'm going to wait and wait for something to happen. You can't do that. You're going to have opportunities that God provides you, but then you have to act on those. And I think I've done that. And inshallah, I'll keep doing that when the opportunities present themselves. I'll obviously do my best to, adhere to that. But yeah, so you asked me about my journey. I start off, I put myself to let me start off this way. Back in the late 90s, it was very hard to get a job in law enforcement. There was not many jobs. The industry was full, like there were no openings. And so, I put myself to the academy, police academy in San Jose. And as soon as I got out of the academy, obviously I applied for jobs throughout the Bay Area at various police departments. And I had been given job offers at several departments, but I chose to go work for the city of East Palo Alto. At that time, the city of East Palo Alto was a very violent a city to work for. A lot of crime, a lot of disturbance, a lot of turmoil, and very small department. And so I went work there for, like I said, a little over 5 years, and I loved every minute of it. I really grew in my profession there, just because of the volume of calls that we used to get and the kind of things that I was exposed to. Really, really helped grow me professionally. I went work patrol there. I was a gang detective, and then from there I went into property crime detective, and then after that I went to major crimes detective, which included robberies and homicides and things like this. So I really grew, and the volumes were just so high. So the reason I love that department, I was like, that was home for me. I had envisioned myself retiring from there, and but I got burned out there. I was just working 6-7 days a week, and because I was a detective, I was on call, and I'd get home at 5 o'clock, and I knew at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night my pager. I don't know if you guys know what pagers are, but my pager would then just start going off every night because I was on call, and we'd start having shootings and all kinds of stuff that I had to go back respond out to again.
When you say pager, I'm thinking of like those things they give you in a restaurant that let you know when the
that's basically what it used to be. But it was what it was you could call the number and then leave your callback number or send a message.
Okay.
So it was like a primitive cell phone, basically.
Makes sense. Okay.
So you couldn't send any messages from it. You could just receive stuff. So that's what we used to carry, and before we had cell phones and stuff. So anyway, so I'd go, every night I'd go back at 7 o'clock at night, and I'd be there till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, come home for a couple hours, sleep, and then back at it at like 8 o'clock again.
Wow.
So I did that for many, many years, I think 2.5 years or so. But, 2.5 years, I was really burnt out. So, because I was involved in all these major crimes, I got to know a lot of the people that worked at the sheriff's office. And at the time, the sheriff was Don Horsley. And he, because I was involved with some major crimes, homicides, investigating them, I got to know Sheriff Horsley. Sheriff Horsley one day contacted me and said, "Hey, come work for me." And I thanked him for giving me the opportunity, but I said, "No, thank you. My home is East Palo Alto." Mm-hmm. But the more I thought about it over the next couple of weeks, I was like, okay, I think I have to, because just for my family, I had my son was quite young, and then my daughter had just been born, and I just wasn't spending time with them. It wasn't fair to my kids or my wife. So I called the sheriff back, Sheriff Horsley, and I said, "Hey, I'll come work for you, but I'm burned out, and I need some time off." So, and I know that the sheriff's office is a very big organization, many different things to do, and so please put me in a place where I can take a breath for a few years. And he said, "Yeah, no problem." And he accommodated me, and I went and I came over to the sheriff's office. We have to go through a basic training program, in-house training program, both on the streets. It's called the FTO program, Field Training Officer Program. And then we also, because like I told you before, the jails run, the sheriff's office runs the jails. So we have to do a jail training program as well, in-house. So I did those two things real quickly. And then after that, true to his word, he assigned me to be a bailiff. And I was a bailiff for about 4.5 years. I loved every minute of it. I learned a totally different aspect of law enforcement because I was working with judges and lawyers and saw that side of it. And, it also gave me a break because working as a bailiff, I was working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, no weekends, no nights. I didn't have any reports to write. So I really got to take a break and reconnect with my family. And then after about 4.5 years, I was ready to go. And, I said, okay, I'm ready to do this. Let's go, and I put in for a specialty position working in our transit bureau. So the sheriff's office in San Mateo County has a contract with Caltrain to provide law enforcement services to them. And so the Caltrain runs from downtown San Francisco all the way to Gilroy. So I put in for that specialty position. I was chosen for it. And for the next several years, I did that. After that, I went back into the detective bureau and worked the detective bureau for several years. And then went out, did a little bit more patrol time. Worked the jails for, I think, 6 months or so. And then after that, I promoted to sergeant. As sergeant, I basically supervised jail teams for several years, patrol teams for several years. They sent me back to Transit Bureau as a supervisor. I supervised them for several years as well. And then a few years ago, we elected a new sheriff, Sheriff Christina Corpus. She is the first Latina sheriff in San Mateo County, and one of the first female Latina sheriffs in the state of California. And so she gave me an opportunity to come up to our administration side of the thing, of our business. And I was a sergeant in our professional standards bureau. And then after that, I promoted to lieutenant. Nice. And as a lieutenant, I now oversee the whole professional standards bureau for the sheriff's office. And what does the professional standards bureau do? We oversee all internal investigations, and we also do recruiting and retention. We do policy. We help our executive team with policy implementation. So those are some of the things that we do up there in our professional standards bureau. So that's my journey. That's what I've basically. That's my career in a nutshell. And obviously I can expand on that if you feel like.
Yeah, I know. So I think one point that you brought up that was really interesting and caught my attention was this point that God gives you all these opportunities, but you really have to take them. I mean, I just saw an Instagram reel today that it was pretty much that same thing. It was like, it might have been a clip from some movie or something, but this kid was narrating a story that there was some man who was drowning in the ocean and there was a boat that passed by and they're like, hey, you need help? The man's like, no, God will save me. A second boat passes by. They ask, do you need help? The guy's like, no, God will save me. The guy drowns. He goes to heaven. He asks God, why didn't you save me? God's like, I gave you 2 boats. Yeah. You just didn't take the opportunity.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that story is really, I mean, it's a lesson for all of us that we might have all these opportunities in front of us, but we got to take them. We got to do the hard work.
Absolutely. Nothing in this world comes easy. You have to put in time. You have to put in the right kind of effort to achieve whatever you do. And no matter what you're doing, right? So I think the one major takeaway from this whole thing is that you have to be dedicated to what you're doing and true to yourself as well. A lot of people say that, yeah, they're in it to succeed, and whatever their definition of success is, right? But people say that, but they don't really mean it because they don't really mean it because they don't want to put the work in, right? They're just going through the motions. And so I would encourage everyone that's listening or watching this podcast to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that no matter what you do in this life, just don't say it. You have to actually do it. And that doing it takes time. It takes effort. It takes persistence. So, I mean, I think, and I truly believe that. And I've, throughout my career, professional career, I've held fast to that. That's what my driving force is. Right.
That's really good. Yeah, that's a really good key takeaway. I think a lot of people, even on reels as well, as like you mentioned, I always see you guys say like, just start, instead of just like saying it, like just how you described, just start and get up ahead and do it. But I wanted to trench back a little bit to when you were in Palo Alto, and we'll work our way up. So do you have any cool, interesting stories or moments at your work in Palo Alto, and then obviously work up, but in Palo Alto specifically, because that was a violent area at the time. So maybe something crazy that happened or that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'll just correct you. I never worked for Palo Alto. I worked for East Palo Alto.
East Palo Alto.
And they're 2 different cities. East Palo Alto is in San Mateo County. Palo Alto is in Santa Clara County. So there's a distinction there. It was a wild time when I first started, and I remember I told you that after the academy, when you go work for a police department or a sheriff's office, you have to go through an internal training program. It's called the FTO program, and so I was in the FTO program at the time, and I think I had been on the job maybe 4 days. So it was my 4th day. Yeah. And typically what we did back then was, for the first 2 weeks or so, you sit in the passenger seat and you're an observer. You've got a trainer with you. The trainer's doing everything and you're observing, right, for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. And then slowly they start going, okay, now you take over and kind of start doing the things, right? So the first couple of days we did that. The 3rd day, my trainer at the time looked at me and goes, "Okay, you're ready. Let's do it." And he threw the keys to me, and off we went. And the 3rd day was fine, just regular calls for service, this and that, whatever. Mm-hmm. The 4th day, it was our last day on, before we went away for our break, 3-4 day break. And it was like a Saturday or Sunday, and midday, and we had one of our officers try to stop a car, and the car didn't stop and it fled. We had a chase, right? And it was a wanted car for some reason. I'm forgetting what it was wanted for, but it was a wanted car. So we're chasing it. It just happened that I became the second unit behind in the chase. So we had the suspect car, the primary car that was chasing it, and then I was the second police car behind the suspect car. And so basically when that happens, the second car, they're responsible for basically putting traffic over the radio, all right? So the first car basically is concentrating on driving and keeping up. The second car then takes the radio and puts out whatever the information they need to put out. So I was doing that, and so we get on from our city. We get into Highway 101, and we're going down southbound on 101. And it's, like I said, it was like, I think it was a Sunday, but the traffic was pretty heavy. It was midday, and this guy like takes a shoulder, and he's like driving on the shoulder like 90 miles an hour. And we're right behind him. All the stuff is just flying up in the air.
Yeah.
And then we exit onto San Antonio Road in Palo Alto, and there's a Costco there. And at the time, there was a Office Depot and stuff. And he exits, and then he's driving on the wrong side of the road, and and there's traffic that's oncoming traffic, and I was just like, I was in the moment there, obviously, and you're just like you're so pumped up that you're just in the moment, and so we kept chasing him. He went around, and then he came back into the parking lot of Costco and Office Depot, and he basically came to a stop like half an inch from going through the window of Office Depot. He jumps out, runs through Office Depot. We gave him foot chase, and then we finally caught him. He was jumping fences, and I jumped a couple of fences, and then we caught him, right? And it turned out that he was committing all these huge robberies all over Northern California, and he was wanted. So that was my fourth day on. And so after everything subsided, and I got back home that night, it hit me. I was like, what am I doing? Right? Like, what did I just do today? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And, it was very exciting, and the thrill was obviously there. And, we obviously got someone that was a menace to society, right? And if we had not stopped him, he would have kept on doing these things and putting people in danger. But I was very proud of that. But at the same time, it was like, what? Like, normal people don't experience this.
Yeah.
And so that was my first taste of like the thrill. And I got hooked. Right?
Yeah.
And those are different times, and we could do different things. The laws allowed us to do a lot more things, and they've changed now. The laws have changed and really become very restrictive on what we can and cannot do. But at the end of the day, whether we're talking about the old days like that or what we currently have, the bottom line is, I do this job, and I know that everyone that works for me or works with me, we're doing this job for one main reason, and that is to better society and better the conditions of the people that we serve. Because at the end of the day, law enforcement is a service industry. We're providing service to the citizens, and so that is our main driving force. That's why we all do what we do. It's not for the money, because obviously, we're not going to become multimillionaires doing this job. It's not for anything else other than that. And so, obviously we have to live, we have to provide for our families, and things like this. But at the heart of it is truly that. And I think a lot of times when people hear law enforcement officers say, "Oh, I do it to protect the community," or "I do it to better the community," people kind of brush them off. I think, especially in today's day and age, with a lot of this just social media that's incorrect, and false information that's put out there. But everyone that I know, and everyone that I've known in the last 26 years in this profession, that is a root of why they do what they do. And I think that law enforcement officers really give up a lot of personal liberties and give up a lot personally to do this job. And I don't think that normal people in society realize what they give up and the sacrifices they have to make to do what they do. So, and I'll also preface this by saying, like, we are bound by laws and policies and regulations at a federal, state, and local level, and also and then the agency also has policies also. And most agencies have policies that are much more restrictive than what state and federal laws allow. So when general people really don't understand that, people think that usually that law enforcement officers are just cowboys or out there just doing whatever they're doing, because this is a lot of this is driven by media and what you see in the movies, and it's totally not like that. It's not at all like that. So we can definitely talk about that if you want to get into it, and I can explain that. So we have the way we do our job is very restrictive. It's very controlled. There's a lot of policies and procedures for everything. Every kind of situation you can think of, we have a policy and or procedure and or law for that. So you have to know all that. You're responsible for that, because if you're out of compliance with those policies, then obviously you're not only bringing liability to yourself, but to your agency. And so every agency is very, very cautious of that, and really watches out for what their employees do and don't do also, because there's stuff that you have to do, and if you're not doing it, then obviously you're not doing your job. So so that's basically what the law enforcement is, and that's kind of like when I look back, and there's hundreds and hundreds of stories that I have, and I almost thought about writing a book one day of all these things that I've experienced, and maybe I will, because I think it's very, very interesting and things that I've been involved in. But that really stands out because it was my fourth day, and that just kind of, after 26 years or so, that really stands out in my mind as one incident that I really remember.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that's crazy. I don't think the general average human who starts a job, I don't think on their fourth day they have a unique story to tell, but for you, it seemed like it's a really cool thing.
I will say one thing. When I was younger, I kind of wanted to join the military. I don't know what was going through my head, but the one issue is the risk involved, especially with officers and sheriff and things like that. But what would you say to the people who fear the risk and also the tech space and all the stereotypes in regards to that? How would you answer that? Yeah,
so obviously going into law enforcement is a very risky business, right? You are running towards danger while everyone is running away, all right? So, and that's your job, and that's what you're trained for. And you have to have that personality, and you have to have that mindset, right? So if you can't do that, then you shouldn't do it, because not only you're going to put yourself at risk, but now the people that are depending on you to be their savior, they're not going to get that, right? So you have to that is an internal question you have to ask yourself. So yes, it is riskier than being a computer scientist or something, obviously. But we train nonstop. The training that we have is phenomenal, especially in California. The people have that legitimate concern. My parents definitely had that when I first started.
Yeah.
And my mom in particular was very, very worried about that. But over the years, she's seen, so for instance, I was a hostage negotiator for many, many years on our SWAT team. And then I became the team leader for the negotiators on our SWAT team. And now I am the team commander for the negotiators. So I oversee all the negotiators, and I've been doing this. I've been part of this unit for 20 plus years now. So I can tell you I have a front row seat to this, and I can tell you that what I was preaching 20 years ago to the people that worked with me, my partners, about communication skills and how important those are, they're all coming to fruition now, because the laws and regulations that we have in law enforcement in California really, really talk to that now, about having those skill sets. And now everyone that is a police officer in California are getting those training. They're getting that training with those skill sets. So it's very, very important to do that. And The politicians have recognized it. The legislature has recognized it. And more importantly, I think our administrators, the chiefs and sheriffs have recognized it. And it's now trickled down to line staff. And we see the benefits of that as well. I mean, we don't want to like become physical with people, and we don't want to fight with people. That's not why we do this job. That's the least of why we want to do it. That's not the goal at all. Like we would rather not do that. So, it's beneficial for us to progress in that way. And I think as an industry, we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing to hear. I think, we've talked a lot about different myths that people have about law enforcement and everything. Let's debunk a few just real quick. Let's just go list by list by list.
Sure.
Could you name like maybe 3 to 5 common myths that there are about law enforcement, especially like ones that the media portray and news portray?
Sure. So, cops are illiterate or uneducated, right? That's one of the major ones that typically you'll find in media, or family members that have come from other countries have that kind of outlook, and that's absolutely not true. I can speak about the agency that I work for, my organization. I want to say 70% or better have at least a bachelor's degree. Probably about 25% have a master's or higher. Probably closer to 30% actually. And I want to say probably about 20 or 30, maybe even 50 members of our organization have a higher degree than that. So we have a few that have PhDs. So that's absolutely not true. And actually, in the state of California, in a couple of years, you will not be able to be a police officer unless you have at least an AA degree. Another myth is that we're all power hungry and violent people, and we're not. If you look at statistics with law enforcement and then the general public, you'll see that the rate of violence or rate of violent instances off duty is much less than the general population. Every profession has bad apples, right? And you can go into any profession and you'll find them, right? And there's a process and procedure to weed them out. And we have the same. We have people that probably should not be police officers, and we have processes to weed them out as well. Now, what makes us different than, let's say, someone working at Google, or that is not morally or ethically of sound character, or a doctor who violates some kind of medical principles, or a lawyer who does the same thing, whatever it might be. The difference is that because of our profession and just the bang for the buck for as far as media coverage and clicks, we get targeted very, very easily, right? Because it's a lot juicier story than some doctor that, whatever, wrote too many prescriptions or whatever, right? Yeah. So that's one thing. And the other thing, and this is a legitimate thing as well, is that, we hold a lot of power. We hold the power to arrest people, take their liberty away, right? The government has given me that power to do that. The government has given me the power to take someone's life under certain circumstances. So there's a lot of power to that. There's a lot of power that we have in that regard. And so I get it when society is very critical of us, when one of us does something that is inappropriate. And I totally get that, and I empathize with that, and I totally see where that's coming from. But at the same time, we have processes, again, to weed these people out and get them out of our industry. And not only within the various agencies, but state and federal mandates also have guidelines for that as well. So, I see that people have frustrations when they see that on the news, but you have to know, if you're watching or listening to this, that it's not brushed under the rug. Things are done about it. And we hold our law enforcement officers to a much higher standard. And, the policies and procedures that I talked about before, those are not only applied to while they're on duty and working, but off duty as well. So they have to be of sound character and mind and correct morals off duty as well. So they can't be just wild animals off duty, right? And then that's not the expectation. So it's much, much more restrictive than any other profession in that regard, right?
I see.
So that's the second. The third is like this whole thing about like he's watching the movies where a cop will, go in there and just blow everything up and shoot everyone that he sees or whatever, or be as violent as possible, and then just walk away and then go to just go on his merry way or their merry way. That's not how it is in real life. First of all, that if something like that ever happened in real life, that would that person would go to jail and prison. But there's a lot of paperwork. 80% of our work is paperwork. So for instance, if there's, let's say, a small little accident between two cars, right? A fender bender. Well, and a police officer gets there and takes a report. To complete that report usually takes probably about 40 minutes, 50 minutes to complete that report. A small little thing like that.
Yeah.
So, and everything that a police officer does, they have to generate a police report for, or some kind of report. A lot of times it's not a police report, but they have to document it in some way. So there is a lot of paperwork. When I first started, I didn't know this. And my writing and English skill sets were not at par, and I didn't know that you have to write, and I hated writing, and so I joined, and I start working, and now I'm getting all these. For everything I do, I got to write a report, and I was like just pulling my hair out. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't want to do this. I want to go out there and go do all the cool things that I see on TV. But that's not the reality. The reality is that we're sitting behind a desk typing all day and doing very little field work at the end of the day. So that's a third myth that people probably have. Another myth is that the last one I'll talk about is that cops don't get paid well. And so it depends, right? In generally speaking, in the state of California, law enforcement officers get paid really well. And so, other parts of the state of the country, I don't know, and I probably not. But in California, we get paid very, very well, and comparable to what other people make in other professions. So, just that's the other myth. Is our benefits are so good. They're phenomenal, actually. And when people that work in private industry kind of see the benefits that we get just in our retirement and our medical and dental and things like this, there's no way that people in private industry are getting that stuff at all. So just in that regard, we get paid really well. We have really good benefits, and you can raise a family in a very comfortable way, doing the job that I do. So that's another myth that people sometimes have.
Perfect.
Right,
yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah, it's good that you addressed that. Now that a lot of those myths that people have preconceived notions of, now they addressed it. It's good. But I want to touch on one of the questions we had was, as being an officer, it involves a lot of emotion, right? And sometimes in a high stakes situation where there's a lot of adrenaline pumping and there's face-to-face confrontations. So how are you able to still use your logic and keep your brain intact? I don't know how to say it another way, but how are you able to separate your emotions and stay focused on what the main goal is?
Yeah, that's a very hard thing to do, and it comes with time and training. You have to train yourself to be like that, and and it starts early. So when you go to the police academy is about 6 months long, and that's where this whole process starts from. They start teaching you and instilling in you that kind of thought process. But a lot of that has to come from you, right? You have to kind of make that transition. And so, throughout the police academy for 6 months, and then in our field training program for another 6 months, typically, different departments have different timelines for that, but it's typically about 6 months. So you're basically, and then after that, you're on probation for typically about 18 months after that. So this whole process of training is, takes about 3 years. So 2.5, 3 years or so. So in that time, you get kind of indoctrinated into those kind of thought processes and thinking a certain way. It is hard. A lot of times, we have, I'll talk about our organization. Our organization is very, very committed to mental health and providing mental health services to our employees. And the sheriff has, made it a priority, and I'm very appreciative of her that she gives us that opportunity to connect with mental health professionals and makes them available to us as a resource. And historically, our industry has been very resistive to that because I'm tough. Like I'm the one that people call when they're in need of help. Like I don't have any mental health issues, or I don't have emotional issues. That's not true, because the kind of stuff that we deal with and what we see over years and years and years, that really changes us. I know it's changed me. I'm not the same person I was 26 years ago. I don't have the same friends. I interact with my family differently. I see the world very differently. I see the world very differently from a normal person. And so, a lot of times it takes people time to recognize that and to actually seek help, just to talk to someone, just to let it out, right? And kind of talk to someone, and someone that understands and can actually help guide you through this process. So that is a very big part of what we do, is that we have to separate our emotions from what we're doing and deal with the situation. And like I said, training plays a big part of that. But at the end of the day, those emotions don't go away. They're still with us. And we have to take care of them one way or the other. Well, sometimes in our industry, people can't cope with it. And then they go, they do things that are counterproductive to their mental health, right? But if you're smart and you work in law enforcement, what you'll do is you'll seek out the professional help and talk to a mental health professional.
For sure.
So that's what it is in our industry. It's changed. When I started, there was no way we were talking to a mental health professional. No way. Okay. But now we're very open to that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. I think, we've learned so much from you so far through this episode. It's crazy. I did not know there was so much to just being part of law enforcement in general. But if there's like an ordinary citizen who's approached by law enforcement, what should they know, do, and what are their rights, pretty much?
Sure. So, when law enforcement typically contacts someone, there's typically a reason behind it. And if that is the case, then the law enforcement officer is going to be at a heightened sense of security. So they might seem outwardly, I don't want to say aggressive, but reserved. They might, be ordering you to do things, right? And so what I would say is that it's not personal. They're not, personally doing that. They're doing that to protect themselves and to make it safe for them and to the people around them. And typically what you'll find is that if you cooperate with them and do what they're asking you to do, what you'll find is that, and you haven't done anything wrong, then what you'll find is that very quickly their demeanor changes, the way they interact with you changes. Because again, once they understand that this is a safe place, this is secure, you're not a threat to them, then there's a shift that happens, and that's a natural shift that happens. It's not that they're saying, okay, now I'm going to be nice to this person or whatever. Yeah. It just naturally it happens, right? So it's a very defensive mechanism when you first get approached by a law enforcement officer. So what I would say is that, please don't agitate the officers if they approach you. A lot of times, what we find, especially nowadays in this day and age, is that as soon as an officer approaches someone and tries to talk to them, they get like the worst kind of like treatment, right, from the get-go. And that just makes things worse, right? So what I would say is be respectful, be calm. You have certain rights, and you should understand those rights. And every person should understand the rights that they have, and when they can, when they're obligated to talk to an officer, and when they're not obligated to talk to an officer. So that's something for you to learn and understand. And that's a constitutional rights you have. But barring that, if someone's contacting you, a law enforcement officer is contacting you, please be respectful, please be calm, and work with them, right? Yeah. Now, I will say this. If you're being mistreated and you continue to be mistreated, then there are venues for you to file your complaints and make sure that issue is addressed, okay? But the time to do it is not there, all right? There's another venue for that. And you can file official complaints with the police department or the sheriff's office. There's many venues to do that. And nowadays, everyone has body-worn cameras. Everything's recorded. So it will be investigated. And, there's state mandates, there's federal mandates, and then there's local organizational mandates as well, that when complaints come in, they have to be investigated. They don't get thrown away in the trash. That doesn't happen. So please understand that if you do have legitimate complaints or concerns, they will be addressed. But the time to do it is not there.
Okay, for sure.
You're just going to make the situation worse. And you might get into something where now you are actually in trouble because the way you're talking to them or your actions, where before it was a misunderstanding, now something's going to happen to you. Okay. You're going to get a ticket or you're going to go to jail or something's going to happen. So don't put yourself in that situation.
For sure. Like I mentioned, there's so many topics we discussed today. If there was a few, let's say 2 key takeaways that a viewer were to take from this episode, what would you say they should be?
Well, I think that I want to start off by saying thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come out here and talk and tell you a little bit about my world, my professional world, and the things that I do. And hopefully I've inspired or sparked some kind of interest in somebody in our community or anyone watching the podcast. I think it's a noble profession to be in. You're actually helping people every day. You help people in their worst time of their lives. You're helping them, and I take a lot of pleasure and a sense of accomplishment in that. And I think everyone that works in this profession does as well. It's a brotherhood, or sisterhood, I should say, brother's sisterhood. We work very closely with one another. There's a sense of camaraderie, and it's a hard road because it's a very tough profession. You're constantly scrutinized, not only within your agencies, but within the industry, but then by society. The laws are constantly changing. There's a lot of things, right? But at the end of the day, I would not do anything else other than this. I love it, and that's the main takeaway. Is no matter what you do in this in your professional life, you got to do something that you love, and that's where you're going to be successful. I don't care what it is, but you have to love it, and if you do that, if you love it, you'll be very successful. And every profession, anything you do in this world, there's success and there's failure. So, I have never lived by the thing of like, what will society say, or how is society going to judge me, or where do I fit into society? I've never done that. I've lived by my own credence and my own standards. And this is what makes me happy. and I think I'm successful in this profession, and that's only because of my hard work and my love of doing it. So that I think that's what I want people to take away from this, is that this is a great profession to be in. Aside from what social media will say or whatever, generally people that work in this profession are decent, upstanding people that really truly want to help their communities and society, and make people safe and be there in their time of need, and do something you love.
That's amazing.
Well said.
Yeah, I know. It's really great points right there. And I think it's quite inspiring just to hear the actual story about being part of law enforcement. Because a lot of times we just hear the outsider story, but never hear from the people inside doing the day-to-day work.
Yeah. Can I just add that, one thing that I really enjoy doing, and it's a part of what I do now, in the Professional Standards Bureau, we also oversee the hiring as well, and recruitment. And so, if anyone is interested and they want to talk about it or whatever, they can always contact me. I'll definitely talk to them, meet them, whatever.
Yep.
Because I think it's very important that people who are interested really understand what they're getting into and the process of getting into it. It's a very long and complicated hiring process. It's a long journey to get to day one.
Yep.
And it takes typically about a year from the day you put in your application, or I should say even before that, you have to go and take a physical agility test and a written test before you can even apply. So from the day you take those tests to the day you get a conditional job offer, it's typically about a year. So it's a very long process. And then after that year, then that's 6 more months of the academy. And then there's 6 months of field training program. And there's 6 more months or 4.5 more months of jail training program. And then there's an 18-month probation after that. Then after the probation, then you're basically considered, a solo officer or deputy. So we're talking about years here of getting to that basic starting level. So in order to do that, there's a lot of pitfalls along the way. There's certain things you have to do that a lot of people don't. There's certain things you should not do that a lot of people do. And you won't know that until you have someone that can help guide you. So I'm available if I'm making that statement and putting that out there, that I'm available to help anyone that might be interested in kind of giving them the roadmap if they want.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on.
I think what we can do is, if anyone will leave, we have our contact email on our YouTube. We have it on the website. So info@journeytowers.org. If you just reach out to us, we can definitely give them your contact info if you're.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I'll leave by saying that obviously I wouldn't be here and in the position I am and the opportunities I've gotten unless it was for God giving me the opportunities to do it. And then my department also, the people that that are my mentors, that have helped me along the way and have helped guide me.
So right before we close this up, usually we do 3 minutes of rapid fire questions. So
okay,
if you're done, it probably has nothing to do with being on law enforcement, but it should at least provide some entertainment for the viewers. 3, 2, 1.
All right, rapid fire number 1. Could you walk us through your morning routine?
I wake up, drink chai, and hurry to work.
Nice.
Right on.
How do you usually relieve stress?
I watch a whole bunch of TV.
What's your all-time favorite movie?
Godfather.
Nice. Do you have a favorite family tradition?
Sunday mornings, my dad usually makes breakfast, and typically we used to go and have breakfast with him.
Nice. What's your proudest accomplishment to date?
I have to say my kids.
It's amazing.
Right on.
Have you ever made an impulse decision that turned out really well?
Every impulse decision I've made has always turned out well.
Nice.
How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Caring, loyal, and forgiving.
Nice. Do you have a current hobby that you're passionate about?
I have 2 dogs and I love them.
Nice.
Nice. What skill are you eager to learn next?
I've always wanted to learn how to draw.
Oh. Right on.
Yeah, I just learned how to draw. It's pretty fire. If you could make one wish for the world, what would it be?
People should be kind to each other.
Good point.
Throw a couple more. Who is your childhood hero?
He-Man.
Who's He-Man?
That's about 2 generations before you.
Okay. I got to throw one out here real quick. The viewer suggested there's a stereotype that cops like donuts. Do you, from a scale of 1 to 10, how do you like donuts and what's your favorite flavor?
So in our industry, we do not acknowledge that we like donuts anymore.
Okay.
It's bagels now.
Oh, okay.
We're big bagels.
So like sesame
eaters.
or like everything bagel or?
It's got to be poppy seed, man.
Poppy seed,
It's got to be
okay.
poppy seed.
Cool.
Go to.
Oh yeah. Board games or video games? Which do you prefer?
Board games.
Can you recommend any must-read books?
Catcher in the Rye
Interesting. Never heard of that.
and Treasure Island.
Oh, nice.
Wow. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Biryani.
Nice.
Biryani.
Classic.
Is there a specific place you're dying to visit?
I was born in Isfahan, Iran, and
nice.
I'm dying to visit that place.
If there's one person on this planet you could have dinner with, dead or alive, who would it be?
I don't know. I've never thought about that.
Mm-hmm. No worries. Yeah. Can you sum up your high school experience in one word?
Interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
That's it. We're out of
And there's
time.
our alarm.
Perfect. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's
All
it.
right, man.